Hello, I'm Jacques Halbronn, and there's been a long time since I haven't given a talk in English on our net Teleprovidence International, and there's been a lot of things which happened in the meantime in terms of astrological theory. We have introduced a few weeks ago the new concept of sidereal triangle. Sidereal triangle. Triangle. Why a triangle? Because Saturn, when it reaches a midpoint between two royal fixed stars. I don't know if you know the idea of royal fixed stars. It's a very well-known concept in the history of astrology and in ancient history, I mean. And there are four fixed stars: Aldebaran, Regulus, Antares, and Fomalhaut, which constitute a sort of square in the sky. And they divide all the cycles in four. You can divide the cycle of the moon in 4 weeks. You can divide the cycle of the sun in 4 seasons, and they divide the cycle of Saturn in 4 periods of 7 years. So when Saturn, the last planet which was known in the antiquity, the most distant planet from the Sun, but in fact apparently from the Earth, and the slowest planet known before, of course, we discovered at the end of the 18th century Uranus, etc. Saturn will give a signal of a new process every time it forms a new triangle with fixed stars. So as you have understood, we have re-established the duality between planets and fixed stars, which is something which has more or less disappeared in the 20th century, if I'm not wrong. Even among the siderealist astrologers, they didn't really care about the stars, and they did care about the planets. While we, in our system, we only consider Saturn, Moon, and Sun, and we forget totally Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, the 4 planets, apart from the 3 I've just mentioned. And the 3 I've just mentioned, they are not planets really. In any case, they are not only gods, but they are forces, they are energies. And they mark, what is important, that where they are, not what they are, but where they are. It's not important to know what Saturn is, but where it is at a certain moment and what it indicates, mentions, and signals. So, this is the idea. And from this point of view, I think it is a major contribution to contemporary astrology by French astrology. It's true that André Barbeau has impressed quite a lot of foreign astrologers, but this is a new development of French mundane astrology. and it's also coming after the work of Michel Gauquelin, of course, which was published first 50 years ago, while the work of astrology of Barbeau on mundane astrology, which is a reference, was published 50 years ago. Of course, the question is, what can you learn from a triangle in terms of social life, in terms of what happens to people? I give a certain importance to the process of elections. Yes. Election is a very important process, and that's why we give so much importance to referendums and elections, etc. And astrology has a lot to do with this process. It is a strategical position for astrology, which has been neglected mostly by astrology and astrologers. So, every 7 years, but more probably every 15 years, which means 2 cycles, when Saturn passes 180 degrees back, yes. And it divides its own cycle in 2 parts of 15 years, more or less, roughly. And that means that we have periods of 50 years. And there are good examples of that. One of my friends, Roger Hackett, Hequet, has recently mentioned the fact that Hitler's career started when he came to power in 1933 and ended in 1945, but in fact he points the fact that if we add 15 years to 1933, we reach 1948, and this is a real bad time. That's the end of the whole process of domination for Germany, and the beginning of something totally new, a new era, where in fact will include the process of a new common market, etc. And an alliance with France, Benelux, and Italy, which we call the 6 members of the first European Union, which was not yet the first European community, as they would say at the time. And there are many examples of that sort of period of 50 years. Of course, it's not 15 years that you start from the birth time. Of course not. We don't give any importance to the birth date here. So it's a process which starts when Saturn is in a certain position with 2 fixed stars, and it reaches the opposite position between 2 other fixed stars, which will include, in fact, the 4 fixed stars, because the 2 triangles combined will do that sort of process. I think, maybe I'm wrong about it. And when it reaches the conjunction, when the triangle disappears and Saturn just joins itself to one of the fixed stars, that's as if you were closing something, you know. Something which was open, it closes. It's not something necessarily positive. It is the end of a process, the dynamic. And we are entering, like they say in the Game of Thrones, in winter. Winter is back. Conjunction is the mark of winter. Conjunction is the eclipse. So it was wrong for astrology to believe that the conjunction was a beginning of something. It's not the beginning of something, and it's not even the end of something. It's a sort of moment where things do not go on, but it continues to live, but in a very slow process at a very low level. And I will end my explanation, my exposure, by mentioning the importance we give to women in my system, that we have called sexopsychology, SC, which means sexology and psychology. And women are important in terms of cycles. As you know, they are moved by a monthly process that we know, and they probably are the part of mankind which is dedicated to receive, not to receive the influence of the stars, but to receive the signals, which is not the same story. We don't advocate an astrology where planets will send us some vibration or energies. We advocate an astrology where societies, ancient societies, have decided and fixed certain signals in the sky as being relevant for them, which is totally a different position about the question. So women react to this triangle, and this reaction brings them to produce a new cycle by choosing a leader, chief. Not only one leader, but leaders in many different entities, many different societies in the world, in companies, society, any sort of leaders. So they are important as a group, not as individuals, but as groups. But they go in the same direction. They say, well, this is a person, this is a place which is a center. And this is interesting because the triangle, as I say, has a center which is Saturn. And Saturn is a masculine process, and the fixed stars are the feminine process, as you know. They are fixed, static. Okay? So when the triangles appears, a magnificent configuration that everybody can see. It's not like a conjunction where it's sort of disappearing things. Eclipse. So no, the triangle is really a spectacular show. And it is a sign that a new page has to be opened, and new hopes, new prospects will come, will be produced. And when this triangle closes itself, this is a conjunction. And with a conjunction, it is a period, a disenchanted period, you say. Thank you for your attention. And this disenchanted period, where the dynamic will be of a different type, will be a feminine period. It will not be a creative period, like the creation of the world by God in the Genesis first, but it will be the Shabbat of the cycle. something where you will not do too much work, you will not move too much, that there will be a minimal process of work, on the contrary of what was exacted and demanded during the triangle time. Thank you for your attention.